Was there a specific moment in your career when you realized AI wasn't just another technology, but something that would reshape industries and also define your leadership journey?
There are a few moments, to be honest. And the first moment was when I was working in this research boutique, AI research boutique. The name is Similex. It's the first company that I co-founded with a professor of mine. We did human behavior modeling and simulations using AI for the Department of Defense. And one of these client that we have, which is the U.S. Recruiting Command, there one time that we built a modeling environment for them, and these guys came to me and said that, hey, I managed to find a disastrous situation for the recruiting strategy, and we asked him how, and he was saying that he did something to the center in Colorado, and we, the builder of that environment, has no idea of what he was talking about. Actually, we were happy because it worked. So and it worked for our client, and that gives me the inclination, and that actually gives me the pleasant surprise that how intelligence can appear without the people building it knowing it in the first place. So, which means that generic algorithm applying to very specific data can give rise to intelligence that were essentially wasn't shared with the builders themselves. That was the first moment. The second moment that I thought was even more powerful was during the MoneyLion time. MoneyLion was a neobank, one of the earliest neobank in the US, and still one of the biggest neobanks in the US. So what we did was we wanted to bring the forefront of AI into the company, and that was the DNA of the company, which is like we want to bring the forefront of AI and technology to the middle American at the time, right? So with that, we started off with lending, and we started lending, and at a certain point, we got to about 40 human underwriters, because each of the loans that you're going to give, certain human has to say approve, disapprove, or KIP, right? So we arrive at the point where we have the loan volume about 40 human underwriter, and then that's when the CEO, my co-founder, pulled me aside and say, hey, it's not our vision to run a HR company, which is to hire like a lot of people. To 10 times the loan volume, we need 400 people, right? At least. So he said, like, hey, why don't we already started using machine learning at the time, and that was simply because I was from machine learning background, and that was the only thing I know how to do. When people say, how do you do loan underwriting? Machine learning is my only answer, because I have no idea how to do it traditionally. So what happened is that then we say, hey, why don't we take the top 10% of the people who that the machine learning, the machine always agree with the human, and then we'll automatically underwrite it. Let's not go through human with it, right? So we did that experiment. It was highly successful. It was really consistent, and it's performing really well. So we did the next 10%, the next 10%. And as you can imagine, within like 6 months, we made do with the whole 40 people. So it became 0 people, right? And to me, that was a big impact, because is how unreasonably effective it is, right? And it also hit me how big of a change it is. This kind of technology can be to the society, because the 40 people that we let go, a lot of them are my friends, right? So and obviously something that we created with 2-3 people managed to displace all these 40 people. And since then, the loan volume was 1,000 times more, and that algorithm actually generated about, at the end of my career there, close to more than 50% of the $700 million of annualized revenue of Moneyline. And you can see this is not just a technological feat, it's a economics feat as well. So these are a couple of moments that drives me into thinking that, hey, this AI thing that we are looking at, it has potential that is, even for a person like me who work on AI forever, it's hard for me to predict. And there are a couple more as well, and which including the latest, which is how we built the right bank, right? So when we first started building the right bank, we've started about 3 months after the launch of ChatGPT, and we were thinking about how do we build a bank from ground up with the help of generative AI, and to use generative AI within the user interface, right? So we throw ourselves a challenge. Why don't we use the least amount of engineers and give them all the AI help and see if we can build the bank in record least resources, engineering resources, and the least amount of time. So that's what we did. And we ended up building the first 1.0 of the bank in 6 months' time, and with 20 engineers.
Otherwise, or if not for AI,
Most of the digital bank before us, which is, I don't know if you know, in Malaysia there are 5 digital banking licenses.
Yeah.
All of them are using more than 100 engineers, and a lot more in terms of like the API costs, the platform costs, and whatnot than us. So ours is pale in comparison with most of them. And some of the example of platform costs is Salesforce. A lot of the other digital bank or even traditional banks are using something like Salesforce as their CRM. We built our CRM from ground up, and we initially thought that we're gonna start with 1 engineer, and we are gonna, if that's not enough, we're gonna start more engineers there. So, but after 6 months, he managed to build one that is very successful, and he got so bored that he said, "Hey, can you start me half time on that project because I want to work on something else."
right?
And essentially that's what happened.
But since banking and finance are a highly regulated sector, right? But if you're going to do this with a record-breaking time, how do you manage your guardrails, your safeties, your security features, no biasness, etc.?
I think that is the way that we build it is actually especially friendly towards compliance and guardrailing. And one of the advantages of using less engineers is the fact that you have less code. There's no question about it, right? So you have less code, and thus you are able to govern the code a lot easier and better. And in fact, what we do is that, unlike some of the traditional bank, the way that they do stuff is that you have the first line and then you have the second line, right? The second line is supposed to govern the first line. So and a lot of times, the second line don't advise the first line from the get-go. We essentially build the principle of the compliance from ground up. So in such a way, our compliance team has easier time to deal with what we have built, right? To govern what we have built. For example, everything that we do is grounded towards privacy. The PIIs that are more sensitive are all encrypted securely in such a way that even most of the engineers do not have access to it easily. So this is how we try to build everything from a design standpoint. So essentially, it's a strategy in technology, what we call the shift left strategy, where you design stuff intentionally rather than having someone else to watch over your shoulder.
So when was this? You dabbing in right bank application development?
This was about 2.5 years ago.
Okay. So if you do it today, 2.5 years later, what do you think would have changed?
I would start off everything from using this particular type of technology called agent-based technology within from ground up in the system development. And I believe instead of having to start with 20 people, I would just choose like the best 10 people and to start off with the whole project. I believe that we would have done a better base that that is supposed to be a lot more intelligent than what we have built even 2.5 years ago, which is a couple of generations more intelligent than most of the traditional bank.
Right. You mentioned about machine learning, that's your background, and you studied this in Purdue, if I'm not wrong.
I did a lot of research
Okay.
on machine learning at Purdue, specifically this branch of AI called agent-based modeling and simulations.
Okay.
And because in Purdue University, it is a large research-based university, right? So similar to but I guess in terms of student body and everything else, it's kind of larger. It's one of the largest in the United States as well. So the good thing about studying in this kind of university is that you have a lot of research labs sprinkled around, like any type of research that we can think about, right? Like biological research lab, medical research lab, and obviously in my case is an AI research lab. So that's when I first started. And the reason I started wasn't because it was especially challenging, or I find it interesting is because that AI lab was the highest paying AI lab on campus. So I needed to go on a summer holiday, and I didn't feel good using my dad's money. So I started working there, and it turned out to shape my career significantly.
By that time, did you think that we would be where we are today in terms of AI tech?
AI was at the time, and mind you, this was for the younger audience. It was there was near when internet was born, the mid to late 90s, and there was a time that AI was supposed to be the cemetery of promising computer science career. However, I did find it interesting, and that's why I pursued through it. And not just interesting, I just found that the work that we were doing at the time was important. So
you spoke about University Malaysia, in terms of research, and you have developed part of the team that developed ilmu. Can you talk us through about how complex, how difficult this work of building a large language model?
The building the large language model is a huge undertaking, and at any given point, you have trillions of tokens, which means that you have these or tens of trillions of tokens that which means that you have this data set that has 10 trillion words, which means that it's bigger than most libraries, right? So and you are supposed to train it using more than hundreds of thousands of processors in terms of cores, right? Because I don't know if you know, we train using like thousands of GPUs, and each of the GPU have like thousands of cores. So you can see how this complexity of running this kind of learning becomes something that most computer scientists have never thought of. The way that we did distributed computing, because you use thousands of GPUs, which means that each of the run will take like 2 weeks to a month, right? So each of the run, if you screw up each of the run halfway, which means that it will cost like 50 million ringgit or 20 million ringgit. So these are high stake. So the data that you collect has to you have to have reasonable conviction that it is going to result in a good large language model after certain training run. Otherwise, there can be against the maturity of a career.
It's good to see that a partnership between a private sector and a university come to a successful product development.
Before that, like I just want to emphasize on this is like really hard undertaking, and the reason why we were reasonably successful, and we have large language model many versions already by now. That the reason was that because we collaborated with the AI lab at University of Malaya, led by this chap called Professor Chan, who has been my friend for more than 10 years. And he has been doing deep learning research for the last 15 years. So he has gained that intuition of doing how this kind of distributed learning in a very large scale. And this is why we managed to shortcut and avoid a lot of the silly failures that might have cost us a lot more money.
But it's interesting to find out that ilmu is very localized. You can understand the local dialects and slangs of a few languages in Malaysia. English, I think there's also Chinese.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
It does change Tamil as well.
And Tamil as well,
Yes.
right? So how did that learning process took place? Yeah. Was it a time that you thought that this may not work? Or did you see there was a light at the end of the tunnel?
That's a very good question, Raja. And this is not just pertaining with large language model, right?
Yeah.
This is essentially, if you look at my career since the beginning, right? My first career was when no one worked on AI. It would be crazy that you work on AI because you most probably hate money because there very little money in AI at the time. And you don't want a real career, right? So I did that for 10 years, and then we sold the company. And then I started doing Neobank, which is a fintech company. And mind you, this is circa 2012, 2013. That's when the word fintech doesn't exist, right? So it's when a couple of years later, when people talk about fintech, that's when me and my co-founder, who was in finance, Mia was in tech, they said, hey, fintech, it makes sense. That's what we are doing, right?
Yeah.
So and then I move on to do right bank and move on to do large language model. So as you can see, the theme of my career is that I build stuff that are very hard to do. So which means at any given day for the last 20, 25 years, that I always think that I'm going to fail. If there is a day that I don't think I'm going to fail, I'm probably not building something that is significant enough, or I'm not taking enough risk to allow myself to be successful. So yes, I have I always think that I was going to fail.
So you must then have good team in your organization or in the work that you're doing, right? How do you get to build that kind of team that's like so focused in getting these things done?
And again, if you look at the nature of my career, right, and that sort of informed the kind of leadership I have, which is, I'm just assuming that it is a very different sort of leadership that other people might have assumed simply because of the muscle memory that built me, right? So if you're being athletic and you have been playing basketball all lifelong versus being athletic and playing tennis all lifelong, those are different type of activity, right? So for me is that I was always in the endeavor of building stuff that are very hard to build. So which means I generally value technocratic people significantly. And I think about how to manage a big team of technocratic people in order to be able to build something that most feel that is impossible to build. And case in point is that if you're a user of Right Bank, you realize that thing is very hard to build. It's the first thing that you can use natural language and command it to do financial transactions. So a lot of people won't even try it. So
why is it hard?
Well, firstly, natural language is a very interesting thing because naturally it is ambiguous, right? So with menus, buttons, processes within user interface, it is something that is pre-programmed by the computer programmers, by the product managers before, right? So whereas natural language is something that is innately culture and is innately human language. That means that it's ambiguous. A single word can mean two different things. For example, bank. It could mean a financial institution, or it could mean a reverse bank, for example, right? So how do you deal with that? So that is actually giving the power to the user rather than constraining the communication of the users by the perception of the programmers. How do you shift to the new dimension of allowing the users to communicate naturally with a computer system? It's something that we have never done before in the banking industry, and we are one of the first who does it and does it successfully.
Now, coming back to ilmu, several languages localized, Malaysianized, very difficult thing to do, right? Then why do it?
Firstly, I don't think we have a choice because if you look at this particular technology, it's called ASR, it's called automated speech recognition. You have the OpenAI version, which is really good, right? So it understands American English 95% accuracy, right? So it's really good. But what if you use it in the Malaysian context? It goes out anywhere from like to 40 to 35% accuracy. So which means when you're at 35% accuracy, it just doesn't work, right? Just doesn't work, right? So which means AI just doesn't work for Malaysians. And to me is that if I want to see Malaysia as an AI-driven country that is on par with the best, we have no choice but to have something that works for Malaysian. And with that, the only way for it to work well is to train it with Malaysian data and work out of the box with the way that Malaysians speak. And case in point, to a lesser degree, how this kind of internationalization can be troublesome for Malaysian is the fact that when you type text on WhatsApp, right, and all of these keyboards are being taught of American or British English, and when you type it, when you type kawan, for example, you always think about it as a different word, and sometimes you do send different words out simply because you are in the haze of time, right? So, but AI is a different thing. AI is imbued into your daily culture, the daily how you do what you how you communicate on pretty much 90% of your waking hours. So to us, any small frictions there will mean that we are a lesser user of AI, and thus potentially from an economy standpoint, from a culture standpoint, we might be retarded in terms of our development.
So you definitely feel ilmu is a game changer for Malaysia.
I think it's a game changer for Malaysia. I think it's definitely an enzyme for growth for Malaysia. How do we move on to become a fast follower in AI? If we cannot be the frontier of AI, such as US and China, we can be a fast follower of it, and it's time to launch Malaysia to realize its potential, where we all think that Malaysia has the potential, but it's always been held back by certain reasons.
So when do we see the Malaysian society using ilmu at scale?
That is what we are trying to work hard to build things that seep into the Malaysian lives as much as possible. One of the things that we're building is agentic e-commerce, because I think shopping is Malaysian competitive sports, and given how many Shopee packages that arrive at my home on a weekly basis, I think e-commerce is definitely something that Malaysians do significantly, and if we can utilize AI to help Malaysians in doing this kind of stuff, as we use AI to help the right bank users to do payment, I think that will have significant impact on the lives of the users. Case in point is that why I think AI is important in e-commerce is the fact that when we are shopping complex stuff, like buying a TV, for example, mini LED versus OLED, it's for most people, like if even I don't have like immediate answer as to what's the difference between the two, right? And how do you compare across like so many different brands, the Chinese brands, the LG and Samsungs of the world, Toshiba and whatnot, right? So, and this is why in the US, when e-commerce first started, 15, 20 years ago, people were thinking that eventually Amazon.com will be like 80% of the market share, and everyone else will share the 20%. And traditional commerce will die, right? But fast forward 15, 20 years later, that's not the case. E-commerce stuck at 15% for the last 10 years. And 85% remain traditional commerce. And why is that? It's not because there are stuff that you cannot buy using e-commerce. It is certain experience that we are not providing in e-commerce. For example, like if you want to, like as I say, if you want to buy a TV, a lot of people are willing to walk to a shop because the guy who man the shop is able to tell you the difference between LED and mini LED, right? And tell you exactly which of the brand has the better one and whatnot. So I think agentic shopping will be able to replace some of it. And these are the functionality that we are building within our ecosystem in such a way that it will hopefully will proliferate AI into the life of Malaysian a lot better. The other thing is, like, for example, how to use agentic government services, for example, right? So most of us don't, a lot of us feel that going to clinic kesihatan is a reasonably obscure task because, okay, firstly, we don't know where they are, and if you have certain problems, we don't even know if that problem fits into that clinic, right? So, but these are the kind of stuff that can easily be solved by agentic AI. And the agentic AI will be able to
How would it solve?
essentially understand your maladies and be able to match with the clinic kesihatan, and will be able to even tell you like, hey, I'll make an appointment for you because it seems to be like Tuesday 3 p.m. you seems to be quite free. Why don't you go and see him on certain maladies that you are having right now.
Coming back to the work that you have done with various stakeholders, for example, I want to talk about ilmu again.
Okay.
Right? So this is where private sector working with institutional higher learning, right? So in terms of talent, in terms of culture, how do you bring this together to ensure that your goals are achieved? Private sector and a non-private sector.
Right. So this is just on the talent part. I just think that Malaysia is no lack of talent, and it's something that I was living in the US for more than 10 years, and I was the CTO of US companies for a long time, and I came back to Malaysia to continuously hire for Moneyline, and I cannot say that hiring in Malaysia is a lot tougher than Silicon Valley or New York. In fact, I would say that it's easier to hire in Malaysia, the similar, level of talent. So I don't think talent is a big problem in Malaysia. So, but in terms of culture difference between education and or research, essentially in this particular case, versus private sector, I think both has to understand each of the way that how a university research lab is doing things versus the enterprise is doing things. And to a certain degree, I think as we progress as a society, that we value inventions a lot more. We value innovation a lot more. That's when we should behave a little bit more like a university research lab. And for university research lab to be more successful, they should look into the enterprise and start learning some of the muscle memory that they have to cater successfully to different clients, to different users, and make sure how to systematically make a project successful. So I think marrying both of them can be, I think it's the only way to be successful in growing Malaysian economy to the newer
But how do you actually execute this? You have two different sets of people, have two different sets of understanding culture. One is very P&L, the one is very research, right? But how do you actually bring them together to say we can work very collaboratively?
First and foremost, I was quite lucky because I have this partner called Professor Chan, and Professor Chan Chi Sing, and he has worked in big enterprises, worked with big enterprises before, such as like some of the such as VBank, such as the big companies abroad that have worked with academic before, right? And secondly is that I have to, essentially me and Professor Chan has to educate some of our enterprise colleagues, saying that, hey, some of these guys might not appear to be as polished as they seem in project management. However, these guys know machine learning like there's no one else in the world, right? So your task is to teach them project management a little bit so that they can manage their project better. It's not vice versa. It's because there's no way in hell I can teach a project manager machine learning to that depth. So a lot of times I have to advise a lot of enterprise C people to potentially lend a helping rail for the academic to be more successful within an enterprise setting. And a lot of times, depending on where you put the incentive is, a lot of the enterprise people are willing to help out on the front to make a leader out of these academics.
So all the projects that you've done, seemingly very difficult, obviously, is what you have mentioned, is extremely difficult, it's extremely hard and stuff. So there must be a vision that you've had, right? And the vision and the execution has to be very aligned. So how did you build that vision, first of all?
I think Silicon Valley is very visionary, and a lot of times the execution might be lacking, right? The Asian companies are amazing in execution. Everyone, like most people, are so good in whatever doing. I mean, as you interview others before, right, you would like post Malaysia, for example, they're so good at execution. Yeah, it's crazy, right? So and as a guy who came from the US, who went to the US to study, work, and came back, I see the best of both. And I am the guy who essentially tried to marry them. Like, hey, this is what vision is. But I always have to tell the visionary guys that say your vision without execution is absolutely useless. And I have to tell the execution guys that says, hey, you can't just execute, but you have to go back to the first principle. What are you trying to achieve? And what you're trying to achieve has to be guided by the vision that we are trying to achieve. And to me, that is essentially, it's a job that I wake up every morning, and that is something that I have to do simply because guiding the difference between these two camps can or these two personalities, sometimes within a single person, right, can be rather interesting. And from a cultural standpoint, you can see why the manifestation of these can be interesting, right? As you can see, in Silicon Valley or in United States, you have by far, I think Silicon Valley just monopolized on cases that vision gone awry, like Elizabeth Holmes, right? She has all the vision of the world, don't know how to execute. That's why she has to resort to bad things, right? SBF, good vision, but don't know how to execute, right? So whereas the Asians are very good at executing and potentially less visionary. So and as you can see, something like right bang, something like ilmu is something that has hopefully the right combination of execution and vision.
So that means your colleagues and team members are afraid to work with you. You sound so surgical and very structured. It can be very overwhelming to some people, but some people may love it because it's very clear.
So
yeah,
this is where that is quite interesting, right? Like okay, I don't know how my colleagues feel. And if I'm gonna guess, is that they have a certain level of as you said, scared of me, yet wanting to work with me. So and these are the kind of people that I try to filter and work with, right? And how do I find people like my immediate next level of people that I always want to work with, right? Is the people that have two polar quality at the same time, right? So how do you find people that are creative yet analytical, right? I don't want to be either that you're just too analytical and not creative at all, or you're just creative.
The right brain and left brain, suppose, to some extent.
To some extent, I don't want them to even be balanced. I want them to have like both quality at the same time. So essentially to have certain level of bipolarness in them, right? So for example, right, how do you find people that want to accomplish a lot, but yet always find shortcuts, right? So those are the kind of like bipolarness that I always look for when I find people that I want to work with.
How do you interview them? I mean, what kind of interview process that you have?
So the good thing about this kind of people is that you ask them a question, and usually they have the analytical mind to essentially tell you 15 stories about what you just asked them. So my interview style is that I want to say one or two sentences, and the guy will essentially talk for 15 minutes to half an hour and coherently on what the one or two sentences I just said, right? So those are the kind of people that I generally work well with. If I ask you two sentences and you answer one sentence, usually those are not the kind of people that work. and obviously, I emphasize on the coherence, right? Like you cannot just tell like a whole bunch of story that is not related to what I just said.
Yeah. Do you see more and more those talents available today?
I think there are a lot of such talents available, and I think from a technocratic standpoint, Malaysia, I think, is blessed with a lot of technocratic talent. The problem with these engineers, this technocratic talent, is not the fact that they all need a good rallying cause to work on. And once they have a good rallying cause to work on, they can be very productive. And this is and there's a reason why that a lot of companies find talent gaps is simply a lot of this talent find that it's not very inspiring to work on something that that these companies are trying to instill them to work on. So and this is all culture, right? So and how do you form this kind of culture is to always have a vision or always have a culture to overachieve, right? How does Right Bank became the first AI driven bank in the world, right? That obviously is a overachievement, and we say that from day one is that, hey, we want to overachieve, and this is why a lot of good technocratic talent wanting to join us is because it's smart people are always ambitious, and they get to be ambitious. They get to. How do you build a hyper localized large language model in Malaysia in the midst of,
All the
giants, in the midst of giants that are within the industry, right? The industry that moves so fast, right? And how do we be the best for Malaysians in this country? That is an overachievement, right? So, and this is how we can rally a whole bunch of talent to join us, simply because of the culture that we are building, the culture of excellence, and not just the culture of excellence. You don't want to be excellent for very small things. You want to be excellent in achieving things that matter.
Having goals that you're afraid of yourself, in fact, in a way, right?
Yes, and much more importantly, understanding what kind of goals that you have is very important as well. And for me personally, I always strive to have goals that positively affect as many lives as possible. Because just making the most money for one organization is a pretty crappy goal, and but to be able to do that and while affecting a lot of lives positively that has nothing to do with the company is something that I think we don't have enough company that strive for this kind of goals.
But you also need good support from the external side of things, for example, the ecosystem, to make it happen, right?
Yes.
So what's your role in the ecosystem today? I mean, is there a particular role that you play in the ecosystem, and how do you interact with them, whether it's domestic, regional, international?
So AI Labs, YTL AI Labs as of now, the creator of Ilmu. So what we do, we are essentially a infrastructure company because we build large language model, right? Like large language model and intelligent algorithm by itself. The rakyat cannot use them directly. You can like we have Ilmu Chat, which a lot of people can use directly, but that is just a small sliver of what we are doing, right? So what we want to be is to be the intelligence substrate for the country, which means that we want to build an ecosystem of builders around us, and the builders will be solving the specific problems that they are solving, like healthcare, for example, manufacturing, for example. There's no way in hell YTL AI Labs can have enough talent to solve all the problems within the country. So we are actively working with builders to make them more successful, because as they become more successful, they will be using more of our APIs, and thus the more AI-driven the Malaysian economy will be, and that is our main goal, our main vision.
Do you see we are on the right growth, what do you call, a trajectory?
I think so. I think we have more than 50 companies that are using our APIs, and beyond just like saying, hey, this is our API, go and use it. We do actively help them to build around our API, and to even actively help them to problem solve and help them to architect their applications in such a way that it utilize AI more efficiently and effectively. Because end of the day, if they use AI more effectively, it's good for us.
All right. What about the regional ecosystem? Because Ilmu is probably, I mean, from a perception point of view, it could be like, oh, this is Malaysian, very Malaysian context, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how would they come in to be part of this equation?
Just want to be clear, right? Like building something like this, it's never a isolated effort. We interact with a whole bunch of AI experts around the world in order to build something like this, right? So we work with researchers from the frontier labs of the world, the builder of Quen, the builder of GLM, the builder of OpenAI, Anthropic, and whatnot. We work with all of these builders, and especially like people like NVIDIA, right, the biggest company in the world. I think we interact with them pretty much on a daily basis, and there are a lot of collaboration that they help us and we help them to build tools that are being used to build large language models, and this is how this kind of humongous goals are being achieved is because of the interactions and the assistance of researchers around the world. And we have like cybersecurity researchers around the world that help us to make sure that our large language model, our chat interface are safe, right? So in such a way that like some of the MIT researchers that I know will come back to me and say, hey, your LM is surprisingly safe. And that's the reason, is because we work with all the cybersecurity researchers around the world, from Alibaba to Oxford, and they all help us to like red team our chat interface.
What's the next evolution of AI or the tech in AI that you are probably looking at or investigating or researching?
The next thing that I think that will bring significant values to the economy is the agentification of applications, and I think the technology leap from the traditional software development to agent type of software is huge, and I think I think even as of now, given like I for bulk of my career, I subscribe to Wall Street Journal, simply because it doesn't talk about the stuff that I work on, right? So I work on AI forever. I look at Wall Street Journal because it talks about something else, right? So it talks about Dow Jones, it talks about everything else. But the weird thing is that for the last 5 years, Wall Street Journal started talking about AI on a daily basis. So I think the AI has come into the consciousness of the society, and I think even as of now, I think the society in general still underestimate how intelligent this kind of software can be. And I think the continuous agentification of the software layers can bring significant boon to the economy, and there's something that I'm extremely excited.
There was recently one meeting that I was in, and in that meeting there were several leaders from various sectors, and one of them was actually a former leader in a big a tech company in Malaysia, an MNC tech company in Malaysia. So for some reasons, we were talking about AI and things like that. And then that person said, "Oh no, AI is just a tool, so you don't have to be too gung ho or too excited about it. It's just a tool." But in recent times, I don't know whether the perception is AI just a tool or AI is more than just a tool. What's your view in this?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, to a certain degree, it's tough. It again, a technology is a technology, right? AI, end of the day, is a man-made technology, right? So, you can say that a phone is obviously just a tool, right? But if you look at how a lot of teenagers are using it in this day and age, it goes way beyond of a tool. It's a portal to a whole different world, to many whole different worlds, right? I think similarly with AI as well, there are a lot of nuances to it, right? Like, to most of us, those are tools, but those are incredible tools, right? So those are the tools that potentially that elevate your productivity by a few times. I don't know about you, but at least I have elevated my productivity significantly with the coding AI, the writing AI, the planning AI that we have, right? So to me, that's amazing. However, that's for me personally. But if you look at the industry or the society in general, it might not affect I think all of our work has been changed with AI, hopefully, and there's no question some of our work are displaced by AI. Okay, so I mean, case in point is that you have voice bots that are so good in this day and age that there are certain level of customer service staff are being displaced, and you can also have copywriters that the copywriting algorithms are so good that it replaces a lot of copywriters. So I think we're still not coming into our consciousness as to what kind of impact AI has on the society, simply because I think it is still playing. To say that yesterday, it's always easy to make a yesterday statement, right? Saying, hey, AI is just a tool, and that is entirely true yesterday. But is it true today? I can I can tell you, even as of now, it is not entirely true today. It is a lot bigger deal to a lot of companies today, right? Is it true tomorrow? I bet you the direction of where this is going will be significantly increased rather than coming down. It's just like when when the internet first started, a lot of companies um, thought or categorize internet as a channel, right? Your mailing as a channel, your TV is a channel, internet is another channel. But very soon, these companies are overtaken by companies that internet becomes their predominant or only channels, right? Case in point is that it used to be newspaper used to be a business that is printing, yet has a large distribution network, right? You have to distribute your newspaper. But suddenly, the internet make the distribution business completely irrelevant, and your journalism becomes a lot more important, right? So, and then you have this whole set of companies that appear that took over the old set of companies simply because they focus on the thing that they need to focus upon, and they stop focusing on the distribution network, where the older version of the company. So again, I think statements like, internet is just a tool is true. AI is just a tool is true yesterday, right? Similarly, like internet is just a distribution channel, which is true until it becomes the dominant distribution channel.
I think it's also because, I mean, in its phrase itself, you have artificial intelligence. It's about intelligence. It's not like any other tool like IoT, you have sensors and stuff. Because this is like right in the center of human domain intelligence. I think there's a bit of anxiety in the society as well. How much of this intelligence will actually encroach into the human intelligence? Now AI moving to AGI, for example, but that's a matter of how you define AGI again, right? Are we there, or are we not there, or what are the things that we can see in the future? What's your view?
If you look at the AI right now, it's quite incredible. If you ask him today, what happened, what is happening to a certain acts that have been passed, and what was the evolution of it, he is able to tell you exactly what it is, right? And if you ask it about like the evolution of Besar Malaysia, and it is able to tell you reasonably coherently about the evolution. If you ask him about chemistry, he was able to tell you a lot about chemistry. So even as of now, it is smarter than actually anyone that I know. So there's no way in hell I can have a friend that is as smart that can tell me all of this stuff, right? So, however, it is extremely intelligent, but what is lack of? It is not able to do stuff, right? Simple stuff, right? Like I want to go to Paris, April 15 to 21st. book me all the tickets and hotel that you think I would like. It is not able to do this kind of stuff, right? So I think in terms of intelligence, is right there. If you ask me, is it at AGI level? The definition of AGI is not, there's no one definition of AGI. Everyone is trying to define AGI to their own good. But I think the actions becomes the limitation factor, and frankly, this is something that Ilmu is trying to address, like AI Labs is trying to address as well, where we are building more action so that the intelligence can action towards can do more actions for you. Like I said, and if you look at like right AI, that is what it is, right? So it has a certain level of intelligence to understand you telling it to transfer money to whoever, but it has enough intelligence to translate it into actions, right? So which is something that I think even as of now is not seen in like Anthropic and OpenAI of the world, and it's something that we increasingly try to cater towards. That said, when we talk about AGI, is the kind of intelligence that is limited towards what the computer can provide. And it is still, in my opinion, still a far cry from what a lot of human what a lot of things that human can do. For example, right? Like if you hire someone and the guy has no experience in customer service, and you if you have him to watch a customer service for like 3 days, the guy will be able to learn reasonably well. And all he did was watching about 30, 35 cases, right, of the senior who did customer service. But AI in general, in order to make it generalizable, I have to give it millions of cases to learn. So AI learning is incredibly stubborn, and it's not generalized as well as human brain is. And end of the day, so there are certain problem space that you will require human intelligence. Like you genuinely don't have a lot of example of it, and thus you need something that can generalize a lot more efficiently to attack those kinds of problems. For example, driving is actually one of the example, right? Like you you generally don't crash too much, but in order to avoid crashing, you can't possibly go and crash like a million times, right? So that becomes a very dangerous endeavor. So, but human driver, we managed to learn how to drive, and we predominantly can learn how to avoid into crashing, which is the kind of endeavor that human mind continuously will be able to excel in. And really, the more you work in AI, the more you appreciate the uniqueness of human mind, and it's the more that you realize that there are a lot of stuff, even as of now, cannot be replaced with AI.
I think there's a lot of amount of fear in certain communities. Or one is taking over their jobs. The other one is on safety or the guardrails, etc. You spoke about making Ilmu safe, or you got feedback from the world tech leaders that Ilmu is seen as safe. How do you make it safe? What is safe?
So this is where I think the first way we do it, frankly, is really not that tough. In order to have safety, you engineer safety, right? So what does that mean, right? So we talk about like multi-agent systems, right? So for example, in Right Bank, right? So you have an agent that understands the intention of the users, and once you understand the intention of the users, you have another agent that potentially now that you know the intention of the users is to ask about how long a transfer is going to take over, then you route it to an FAQ agent kind of thing. And however, before that, you have multiple agents that detect malicious stuff, right? Like, is this guy trying to transfer money out of someone else's account, right? Is this guy trying to make me do something that is detrimental towards my banking systems, right? Or even is this guy's I am, but as in the right AI is a financial agent. Is this guy trying to ask me about chemistry homework, right? So these are the irrelevant stuff, right? So you build these agents in order to detect malicious content or wayward content, and then and generally the large language model is in what we term is that is a probabilistic agent, which means that every time that you give it the same input, it might have different output. So then you build agents at the output of it that detect potentially wrong output, hallucination output, and be able to prompt the large language model to either redo it and make sure that it is doing it correctly. So and this is why as an AI systems in this day and age, the hallucination phenomena is generally quite soft because of this multi-agent type of architecture.
Today, there's a lot of discussion around AI first organization. There's some articles published, and you can see posts in LinkedIn, etc. Is this a real phenomena that we are getting into, like AI first organization? And what do we mean by AI first organization?
It's a good topic to have. Firstly, I there's no question that the definition of AI first organization can be it's not well defined, and I think it depends on each of us. I think we can define it differently. If we think that AI first organization is the same organization as we had before, except that we use AI as much as possible, I think that's the right way to go, right? So you don't change the soul of the company, right? So and case in point is that if you look at like most of us, right, the leaders of companies, we wake up in the morning, right? So what comes to your mind most of the times are usually not, hey, how do I use AI to replace something? Most of the time, the biggest problem that you are trying to solve includes like, hey, how do I resolve the personality difference of these two important person or two important organizations that that are working very well individually together, but somehow are clashing a little bit, right? So how do I resolve that, right? So these are something that I don't think AI will be able to help you to solve quite well. And how do you potentially grow revenue on potentially East Malaysia, and how which East Malaysia expert that you want to consult in such a way that it can tell you what are the market nuances there. It's something that is tough for AI to do this kind of stuff, right? So, however, if you're asking me, can I use AI to write speeches or rousing speeches in order to unite the two fighting camp? I might be able to do that, right? So again, it depends on what it means by AI first. If you think that AI will solve most of your problem, it won't. But can you use AI to partly help you to solve the problems? Most likely than not, you can do it quite well. So if AI first means that you use AI to help you as much as possible, I think that's a good definition of it.
Do they all need to build their own LLMs or SLMs?
Hopefully, and this is that's the reason why we are building Ilmu, is the fact that we think if we manage to get it to contextualize to a certain degree, most organization and most use cases will be able to use our LLM, and with the right type of prompting in this day and age, they call it context engineering. they will be able to use our LLM onto their specific use cases. And frankly, building LLM is a very expensive endeavor, and it's a very technical endeavor.
So you won't encourage enterprises to build their own LLMs unless they are ready to do so with large amount of capital, etc.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't encourage most of the time unless you have big enough of a problem space that takes, that you're willing to spend hundreds of $millions to train an LLM. And then and frankly, to me, is that one of the biggest pitfall of thinking about what AI is that a lot of leaders think about AI as GPUs and large language models, but most enterprise leader or institutional government leaders should think about it from what kind of intelligence architecture I want within my organization, right? So what kind of tasks I want intelligence to help, and how do I get there in the shortest cut? And that usually doesn't involve the heavy procurement of GPUs or retraining large language model, but instead of reusing something and be able to get to that point as soon as possible. And this is where I was talking about when we come into the scene. The ASR was 95% accurate in English in US, but 35%. But at 35%, there's no way in hell you can solve much of your intelligence within your company. But if we already have an ASR that is able to understand about 85% accuracy, then the reason for you to increase from 85% to 95% is a marginal return for it. So might as well just use something that we have built.
Why did you study machine language?
I didn't study machine language. I studied computer science and specifically electrical engineering. I guess I'm always a nerdy guy, and this kind of stuff, building things, excite me and continuously to excite me for the last 20 years. So I guess I stumble upon what I'm passionate for. Since I was really young, and I was glad for it.
If you look at now, today, AI is big. AI is very popular.
Yes.
I think there'll be more talents today wanting to learn computer science and machine learning compared to your days. Maybe it's true. So there must be a reason why you choose computer science. You said you are passionate about computer science, but what part of computer science that you were so passionate about that you continue to do until today?
To be honest, the initial part of what I was really interested in, and frankly at the time, you're talking about like mid-90s, computer wasn't that advanced, right? Like the internet was like text based, right? So wasn't very
Windows 95.
Yes. My time wasn't even Windows 95. It was like 3.1. Windows 3.1. So and we were using a lot of DOS at that time, right? So but I was really interested in physics and math, and sometimes when you think about it, it's really hard to differentiate between interest versus what you're good at. And I thought, I guess I was good at math and science to a certain degree, and essentially that's how I gravitate towards, and which is interesting, right? Then I started doing a lot of coding, but if there's anything in the latest generation of AI is good at, it's actually coding, right? It's simply because the task is verifiable. If it doesn't run, then it's a bad code. If it runs, then at least you get to the next version of verification where does it actually do what it's supposed to do, right? So, but because of that, we are able to train AI to be very good at coding. In fact, it's so good at coding that most senior developers routinely just use AI 90% of the time to in their jobs. So most code nowadays can be written using AI with a few tweaks. So which leads into the question: do you need to learn coding anymore? right? So is there a reason to even study computer science or computer engineering, for example, right? So that can be a very interesting question in the next 2-3 years, and that will unfold. Um, it's tough to predict how it will unfold, but if I'm going to predict, I'm gonna think that the coders of the world, you might, just because they can be so much more productive than before, and thus their value ironically can go even further, simply because instead of hiring 40 coders, now you can accomplish using 5 coders. So which means that I can afford to build these digital systems that I couldn't have afford before. So which means a lot more companies suddenly can afford like this kind of digital system, and thus a lot of people can hire the 5 um, computer engineers before, right? And this is generally popularly known as the Jawon paradox, where the cost of something goes down, the demand goes so much more that the volume that is being delivered becomes a lot more. And these are the kind of I think digital systems a lot of times are being limited uh, of its existence simply because the cost that is needed to build it. And if the cost needed to build it becomes a lot less, a lot of people will start doing a lot more of it.
Does your work that you do today affect how you see the world?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's
In what
something,
ways?
and again, it's something that I don't think it's the work that I do today affect how I see the world. Is the work that I always have been doing affect the way that I see the world? And case in point is that the first incident that I was telling you is that how we can code computer intelligence that are much more intelligent than the creator themselves, and that affect the world significantly. And if you look at how our world is being ran today, if you look at how Grab is being ran, right, just to coordinate the crazy complexity of um, tripartite of the food order people, like consumers, drivers, and restaurants. No one can do that. And this kind of like emergent intelligence can only be made available through machine learning, and that changed the world, right? How you go into Shopee and it is able to recommend the right stuff. How you can search the whole internet just with like a few words. These are the kind of stuff that is emergent intelligence, and that changes the world, right? So and how machine learning can help in Moneyline's the deep learning days, is that how machine learning can help to reduce to learn from like this huge amount of data and be able to generate a behavior that can be converted into a commercially valuable action, right? In that particular case, will be loan underwriting, right?
Right.
And how it is able to do so much better than human being, that changed the world as well. And within that microcosm is that we managed to change not just from human underwriter to data scientist, is that instead of the tens of thousands of if-else statements that a legion of programmers used to be able to program, you don't need to do that. You just need like 5 data scientists that generate it from like a huge data set, right? So that changes the world. And in this particular case, if you look at what the right AI is providing, I think it changes the world because for the first time ever, there's so many computer systems, so many digital systems in the world that are very capable in doing things, right? Like like your CME click, for example, right? It's able to transfer your money. It's a digital system, but you cannot communicate to it using human natural language. I think that phenomena is gonna change the world, where computer systems, digital systems become almost like a human being. It's like a concierge service, right? Like a hotel concierge service, a banking concierge service. So the way that we interact with computer systems fundamentally has changed, and thus I think that will change the participation, like the people that are willing to participate in it. So and that goes up anywhere from 15% to like 85%. These are the kind of like inflection point that I think will happen in the very near future.
I see that you are quite optimistic about AI in the
I'm
future.
deeply optimistic.
Deeply optimistic. But there's
Not
also
just AI, technology in general.
okay. So then there's also another group of people who's a bit pessimistic about AI. You know, doomsday, Skynet. You know, AI controlling the world, and etc. What's your view on this?
As a guy that are more than willing to make fun of myself for the wrong predictions I have made along the last 20, 25 years of my career, when first Android came out, I predicted that iOS is gonna die simply because the Mac OS versus Windows thing before. It did not die. It was so much stronger. When Apple Music came out, I just thought that Spotify is gonna die. It did not die. It came back so much stronger than before. So as a guy who made a career out of like a lot of wrong predictions, but then again, it's always interesting to look at this doomsday prediction as well, right? And this is not new, right? When phone was invented, it was predicted that human will never go out of their home, and everyone will grow fast simply because all they need to do is to speak on the phone, right? And will never need to go out from home. When internet was first invented, right? People start thinking, oh, when social network was first invented, like people just stop thinking that people would stop having physical gatherings, right? Simply because you can so easily talk online and with like video conferencing and whatnot. But most research has shown that like even within like a university, when people are able to have a social network, they tend to have more physical gathering more than before, simply because discovering other people, similar like-minded people, becomes easier, right? So I think these are the kind of doomsday scenario that is easy to predict, but I think more likely than not is less likely to come true, simply because I think human generally react, right? So and case in point is that I think the job was secretary, right? For the longest time, it was to dictate like what the executive was gonna say, or and potentially send out the letter. But that did not come along, because like the executive were able to type it themselves, and it was really easy to type, and thus most of the executive nowadays, they don't write. They actually write their own speeches, right? Then secretary evolved to become more strategic, right? Like managing who are the important people that get into the calendar. So just because something is no longer there, or something that seems to be a lot more powerful, doesn't mean that human being just doesn't react to it and be able to create more towards the prosperity of society in general. I mean, case in point is that it used to be like 85% of everyone just involved in agriculture. Now it's like less than 5%. Doesn't mean that like the 80% of the people becomes unemployed. And in fact, it doesn't happen, right? Because we invent categories that now you start working on manufacturing, you start moving on financial services and everything else. So to a certain degree, humans generally have a very good ability to adapt.
That's optimistic enough. I can see how optimistic you are now. You are able to articulate and tell the difference between what went wrong and how you can go even better, even though it went wrong. It's not so wrong, but threats maybe seemingly like a threat, but actually it's not a threat. It's probably an
It
opportunity.
is still a threat, and again, we have to be realistic with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like social network, for example, right? I think generally, as a society, we did benefit from it, right? But however, there is a level of population, right? Like a segment, right? Like it's being reasonably well studied, is that teenage girls tend to have depression if they spend too much time on social network, and that's bad, right? So the way to counter that is to potentially govern. If you have teenage girls, then don't let them to go online so much, right? So that's one of the ways to cater towards this. And AI it helps a lot of us in our productivity, and it helps the malicious hackers in their productivities as well.
Right.
And I think a good way to counter them is actually with AI that counter this kind of malicious
Right.
intent.
Throughout your career till today, was there any regrets? You probably thought maybe I should have done better in this area, or should have done this at all.
When you're a builder and when you're an entrepreneurs, you touch a lot of lives, and you touch a lot of lives closely and sometimes significantly, and there is no single day that have gone through that I don't think about mistakes that I made and regrets that I have. And it's especially when you get into certain level of leadership, most decisions that you make, there are pros and cons. And as a as a reasonably normal human being, um, you always think about the cons, and especially cons that has happened, right? The people that you have potentially you think did not get an equitable outcome out of situation, and a lot of times you tend to want to make up for it, but generally there are numerous regrets that I have. But doesn't mean that I don't have wins that I totally celebrate.
Yeah.
But as if you want to be a lifelong entrepreneur,
Yeah.
a lifelong builder of significant technology, you will have regret. It's not because you're seeking for it, but it's just the nature of how things are.
As a senior leader in your organization, as also an entrepreneur, I'm sure the stress level can be quite overwhelming at times, because not only chasing deadlines, but you have issues to solve, you have many parties to deal with, etc. How do you balance your life?
Having a good support network is definitely a must. And the other thing is that to me, I think we are both family man. Having the support of your family and being able to participate in growing each other becomes a very important part of my life. And for me, is that understanding yourself becomes extremely important, because we generally have this. Yes, as when we were younger, we always have this what we call the mimetic desire, where we try to follow what more successful people have done. But after a while, you start to gain certain maturity and say, okay, this is not what I want to do. So one of the things that I don't do very much is socialization. I try to get home before the day is dark, so that I get to have a chance to have dinner with my family. And then after I have dinner, I want to, go back to work, like reply to some email, maybe do some coding myself, or read a paper or two. And these are the kind of stuff that I think that is productive to the company and generally work very well for me. right? So there are people who are built for socialization. If they don't go out for a night and know new people, they don't feel well. So but that's not me, right? That is absolutely the profile of certain more successful people. But that is fine. After a while, you have to make peace with yourself. Like, hey, this is something, and this is how I doing things that I think that I innately want to do, and it's something that I think that is how I cope with stress. And I exercise. I exercise reasonably a lot. So and it's something that I used to cope with.
To our listeners and audience out there, what would be your advice knowing AI and where is it heading today?
I think like everything else, like all the fundamental technology shift that we have, it's always scary. But as we all know, being scared is not a strategy, and to jump into what you're scared of is also not a strategy because it might not be what you want, right? But to find out more about it and potentially understand more about it is something that that can be valuable. And and AI is something that I think is more important of an invention or of a shift than potentially the internet or the social network or the cloud revolution. I think it's the most important revolution that we had thus far in our lifetime. And understanding it more and be able to understand how to deal with it in your life, in your career, becomes extremely important.
Chee Mun, I truly enjoyed this conversation. It's been absolutely amazing. And I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for
your
having me.
views.